Chapter 1, The Long Silence. The hum of the wayfarer's rest had become Elias Ward's only companion, a deep, low vibration that pulsed through the freighter's aging bones, like the heartbeat of a tired old beast too stubborn to die. 20 years among the stars, and that sound had become more familiar to him than laughter, than a woman's voice, than the cadence of home. He sat in the cockpit, boots kicked up on a console patched with mismatched alloys, watching the infinite void through a scratched viewport. The stars bled into long streaks of white as the ship drifted on sublight drift. No destination, no purpose beyond keeping him alive. Outside, the galaxy shimmered with neon colors. In the distance, the gas giant they orbited glowed like an ember, its rings scattering light across the wayfarer's hull. Yet inside, everything smelled faintly of recycled air and old machine oil, a reminder that this ship wasn't meant to be beautiful. It was meant to endure. Elias took a pull from his flask. The burn of the liquor was dull now, just another ritual. He stared at his reflection in glass. Grizzled beard, sharp lines around tired eyes, hair gone more iron than black. A man who had seen wars end, seen comrades buried in void coffins, seen promises broken. What he hadn't seen in 20 long years was a woman's face. Proximity beacon, the ship's synthetic voice droned. Its tone was flat, mechanical, utterly devoid of the warmth that came with human speech. Elias shifted, setting the flask down with a clank. Where? Station. Karen 5. 2 light hours. Habitable. Trade legal. He grunted. Trade legal doesn't mean safe. Still, the mention stirred something. Karen 5. He remembered docking there a decade ago. A city carved into a hollowed-out asteroid, drenched in neon, crawling with aliens who traded everything from plasma rifles to living slaves. Dangerous, yes, but it was life. And life, even alien, was better than the silence. With a flick of his hand across the console, thrusters roared, the hum deepening into a thunder that rattled the seat beneath him. The wayfarer's rest groaned like a wounded animal forced back into battle. But she answered. She always did. The hours bled away as he approached the station. The void gave way to light. Karen 5 loomed out of darkness, its surface pocked with glowing scars. Towers of metal jutted from the asteroid's crust, each one draped in neon glyphs that pulsed like veins. Traffic lanes glittered with ships of every shape, sleek insectoid cruisers, hulking cargo haulers, shimmering vessels that shifted colors like liquid glass. The wayfarer's rest slid into the approach queue, dwarfed by giants. Elias leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The sight never failed to rattle him. Humanity had clawed its way to the stars with rusted steel and stubborn grit. But these aliens? They built beauty, cities that pulse like living organisms. Docking Bay 12. The comm crackled, a guttural alien voice issuing commands. Copy, Elias muttered. His own voice sounded strange in the cockpit, rough from disuse. The ship sank into the maw of the station, lights flickering across its battered hull. Magnetic clamps bit into the freighter's belly, sealing it in place. The hum of the engines faded, leaving Elias in silence broken only by his own heartbeat. He sat there, staring at the sealed airlock. 20 years without a woman. 20 years without laughter, without touch, without the warmth of being human among humans. The galaxy was teeming with life, scaled, feathered, tentacled, but to Elias it had been empty all the same. He rubbed a hand over his jaw, the rasp of stubble loud and quiet. Don't linger, he told himself. Trade, refuel, move on. That was how he survived. That was how he kept the silence from swallowing him whole. And yet, something tugged at him, a sense that Karen 5 would be different this time, that the silence, so long his only companion, was about to be broken. He powered down the ship, slung his coat over his shoulders, and palmed the door release. The airlock hissed open. The scent of Karen, 5, washed over him. Sharp ozone, hot oil, spices that burned the nose, and something sweet underneath that reminded him faintly, achingly of home. Voices echoed in alien tongues, harsh and musical, layered over the constant drone of the station systems. Elias stepped forward, boots striking the metal floor, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat in a cavernous bay. His heart quickened. For 20 years, he had been a ghost drifting through the stars. Now, as neon light bathed his face and alien eyes turned toward him, Elias Ward felt the silence shatter, though he didn't yet know what or who was about to speak his name. Chapter 2, A Voice in the Neon Bazaar. The Bazaar of Karen. 5 was a labyrinth of light and shadow, a marketplace carved into the asteroid's arteries and lit by 1,000 shifting glyphs. Neon signs shimmered in alien hues, their characters crawling like living insects across metal walls. The air was thick with stew of scents, sizzling oils from reptilian cook fires, the acrid bite of plasma fuel, incense smoke coiling from shrines dedicated to alien gods. Elias Ward walked with his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his long coat, his eyes moving over the chaos. He'd been here before. He remembered the sounds, the way every species seemed to shout over the other in the rush of trade. A 4-eyed merchant barked in a guttural tongue while waving a jeweled blade. A pair of insectoid traders clicked their mandibles, displaying chitin armor plates like prized relics. And everywhere, the sense of tension. Credits exchanged fast, weapons drawn faster. He kept his steps steady, boots striking against steel plates that thudded underfoot like hollow drums. 20 years had taught him how to move unnoticed. He was just another human drifter, with a scar across his cheek and weariness in his eyes. No one cared. At least, no one should have. Then it happened. Cutting through the din, he heard it. A voice, clear, feminine, human. Elias Ward. The name landed like a strike to his chest. His heart lurched, the blood rushing in his ears louder than the bazaar's clamor. He froze, head snapping toward the sound. She stood across the crowd, framed beneath a glowing arch of violet neon glyphs. Draped in silk robes of alien weave, shimmering between shades of midnight blue and silver, she seemed impossibly out of place. Her hair, dark human, fell like a shadow down her shoulders. 2 reptilian guards loomed behind her, scales catching the light, their slit-pupiled eyes cold and watchful. Elias felt the world tilt. He hadn't seen a human woman in 20 years. And now, one was looking straight at him. "You know what to do, human," she whispered, though her voice cut across the distance as though carried on a current of power. The words lodged in him, pulling at something deep, half buried beneath years of silence. He started forward without realizing, weaving through the crowd, eyes locked on hers. The crowd parted unwillingly, alien eyes narrowing as he pushed past. A saurian merchant hissed in his direction. A bird-like alien chittered curses, but Elias barely heard them. His boots struck faster, his chest tight with confusion he couldn't name. He reached the edge of the archway, close enough now to see the sharp angles of her face, the shadows beneath her eyes. She wasn't untouched by this place. There was steel in her gaze, a hardness that mirrored his own. "Who the hell are you?" His voice came rough, strained. She tilted her head, lips curving into the faintest smile. Someone who remembers what humans are capable of. The reptilian guard shifted, one hand curling around the hilt of a plasma blade. Elias tensed, instinctive, hand twitching toward the old blaster holstered beneath his coat. The guard's nostrils flared, the air charged with the threat of violence. But the woman raised a hand, finger slender, commanding silence. The guard froze. Her eyes never left Elias. 20 years of silence, she said softly, though the words carried an edge. 20 years without a woman's voice, without a reason to fight. Tell me, Elias Ward, are you still the human who doesn't break? The noise of the bazaar pressing again, clattering dishes, alien songs, the buzz of neon lights. Yet in that instant, everything else felt distant. Elias swallowed hard, throat dry, his chest ached with something fierce, something forgotten. He should have walked away. He should have kept his head down, traded for fuel, and disappeared back into the void. But instead, he found himself whispering back, almost against his will. What do you need me to do? The faintest flicker of relief crossed her face, there and gone like a passing shadow. Good, she murmured. Then we don't have much time. The reptilian guards flanked her again, one sneering at Elias with fangs bared. Yet she turned, robes trailing like liquid silver, as she stepped into a side corridor. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Elias stood there, heart pounding, caught between instinct and destiny. The Neon Bazaar pulsed around him, alien eyes watching with curiosity, suspicion, hunger. 20 years without a woman's voice. And now one had shattered the silence, with words that would drag him back into the fire. Chapter 3. The Deal with the Devil. The corridor she led him into twisted away from the bazaar's neon glow, narrowing into shadows that smelled of ozone and rust. Alien glyphs flickered on the walls, half-dead lights buzzing like insects, while the hum of the station's arteries vibrated beneath their feet. Elias followed, every step taut with suspicion. The reptilian guards moved like predators, their clawed feet clicking against the metal. They kept glancing back at him, as if deciding how easily they could kill him. His hand brushed the inside of his coat, the familiar weight of his blaster resting there like a promise. The woman stopped at a sealed hatch. She pressed her palm against the scanner, the glyphs pulsing briefly before the door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a chamber dressed in silks and shadows, cushions strewn across the floor, alien incense coiling like smoke serpents through the air. It was the lair of someone who knew how to survive in Karen 5 by playing dangerous games. Sit, she said, her voice calm but edged. Elias remained standing. Not until you tell me who the hell you are. She studied him for a moment, then lowered herself gracefully onto a cushion. My name is Lyra. She gestured, and the guards stepped back into the shadows, their eyes still glinting like knives. I was born human, but I was not raised as one. Elias narrowed his eyes. You've got a strange way of saying hello, dragging me into some silk den with lizards breathing down my neck. The faintest smile tugged at her lips. You've been among aliens too long, Elias Ward. You've forgotten what it means to be recognized. The sound of his name from her lips unsettled him more than any plasma rifle could. He stepped closer, shadows cutting across his scarred face. How do you know me? Lyra leaned forward, and for the first time, her hard facade cracked just slightly. Because they talk about you. Even now, the human who wouldn't yield, the soldier who fought until the stars burned and still refused to kneel. Her voice dropped, almost reverent. They fear you. Elias scoffed, though the words lodged in his chest. Fear me? I'm a washed-up freighter captain. Nothing more. She shook her head. No, Elias, you're exactly what I need. The incense thickened, carrying a metallic tang beneath the sweetness, like old blood. Elias clenched his fists. Need me for what? Lyra's eyes sharpened, a spark of defiance in them. To free me. The words hung between them like a blade. I'm bound, she continued, voice steady but carrying weight. To Karen's warlord, Threx. My life is a contract, my every step watched. I can't break it, not alone. But you? She leaned closer, her gaze locking with his. You're human. You're reckless. You survive things no alien would dare attempt. That's why he fears you, Elias. And that's why you're the only one who can help me. Elias paced, boots crunching faint grit on the steel floor. His chest tightened with familiar ache. Memories of comrades lost because he chose to fight when he should have walked away. I swore I'd never get dragged into another war. Not for anyone. Lyra tilted her head. And yet you came here. You didn't walk away in the bazaar. You heard my voice and you followed. His jaw worked. He wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong. But her words cut too deep. He had followed. After 20 years of silence, he couldn't ignore her. You don't even know me, he said finally. Her voice softened, though her eyes never wavered. I know enough. Humans are dangerous because they never stop. You can be broken, scarred, abandoned, but you endure. That's what makes you different. That's what I need. The reptilian guard shifted in the shadows, the low scrape of claws on metal, a reminder of the risk pressing in on him. Elias turned toward the hatch, then stopped, exhaling through clenched teeth. The silence of 20 years weighed on him like chains. He looked back at her, at the faint line of desperation hidden beneath her steel. Damn it, Lyra, he muttered. If I help you, it won't be clean. People will die. Her reply was instant, sharp as glass. They already are. Every day I stay here, more blood stains the station. Help me, and maybe we both crawl out alive. Elias closed his eyes just for a breath. Then he gave the smallest nod, a decision heavy as gravity itself. All right, he said. I'll play your game. Lyra leaned back, her lips curving into the faintest smile, though her eyes betrayed something deeper, a flicker of relief, almost fragile. Good, she whispered. Then our deal is sealed. And Elias Ward realized with a sinking certainty that he'd just struck a bargain with something far more dangerous than the silence. Chapter 4. Flight Through the Steel Arteries. The alarm began as a low moan in the station's bones, then built into a shrieking wail that rattled the metal walls. Emergency glyphs pulsed scarlet, washing the corridor in a heartbeat rhythm of light and shadow. Elias Ward didn't need Lyra to tell him what it meant. The warlord Threx knew she was gone. Move! Elias barked, grabbing her wrist. The reptilian guards who had shadowed them were already dead. Elias's blaster had cut them down the moment the alarm screamed. Now he dragged Lyra into the artery of Karen 5, a tunnel that seemed to stretch endlessly, lined with pipes, vents, and flickering lights. The station's infrastructure hummed like a living thing, vibrating beneath their boots. Behind them, a squad of mercenaries poured into the corridor, armored in jagged black plates. They moved with predatory speed, weapons glowing with plasma cores. Their guttural shouts echoed, carried on the metallic air. Chapter 5. Goes to the Frontier. The Wayfarer's Rest trembled as its old engines flared to life, pulling free from Karen 5's gravity well. Elias Ward sat hunched in the pilot's chair, hands steady on the controls though sweat beaded at his temple. The viewport filled with streaks of light as the freighter pushed into the void, leaving the station's neon blaze, shrinking behind them like the last ember of a dying fire. Inside the cockpit, silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence Elias had known for 20 years. This one was heavier, charged. Lyra sat opposite him, her figure framed by the soft glow of the ship's consoles. The shimmer of her alien robe seemed out of place against the battered, utilitarian interior, like a jewel dropped in dust. She hadn't spoken since they boarded, her gaze fixed on the starfield outside. Elias caught the tension in her posture, the way her fingers twisted the fabric of her robe, and he recognized it. The look of someone who had run too long, carrying ghosts she couldn't set down. He broke the quiet first. You want to tell me why I just killed half a dozen lizard mercs to drag you out of there? Her head turned, slowly, eyes sharp. You didn't drag me. I asked, and you agreed. Elias snorted. Yeah, against every instinct I've spent 2 decades sharpening. He leaned back, the chair creaking. People who make deals with warlords don't live long. Those who break them live even less. Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I wanted this? She turned fully toward him now, eyes burning. I was born free, Elias. But freedom means nothing when you're a bargaining chip. Threx claimed me before I was old enough to fight back. He bound me to him with contracts written in alien blood law. I became property. Elias stared at her, something cold shifting in his gut. Slavery wasn't new out here, but hearing it from another human, it twisted the knife. You stayed alive, he said finally. Her gaze faltered, softening. Barely. But I listened. I learned. And I waited for the right moment. She hesitated, then added quieter, I waited for you. The words sank into him like a weight. Elias looked away, to the stars sliding past the viewport. His reflection stared back. Tired eyes, scarred cheek, a man who'd buried too many. You've made a mistake, he muttered. I'm no savior, just a relic of the frontier wars. A soldier who outlived everyone who mattered. His hand brushed unconsciously at the controls, as if steadying himself. The last time I trusted someone, I buried my crew in space coffins. That was 20 years ago. I don't make the same mistake twice. The ship hummed, the sound filling the silence that followed. Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable, until at last she said, You carry your ghosts like armor, but armor doesn't heal wounds, Elias. It just hides them. He gave a dry laugh, no humor in it. You talk like you know me. I know enough, she countered. You didn't hesitate back there. The others fear chaos, but you thrive in it. That's what makes humans different. You take pain and turn it into fuel. She leaned forward, her eyes locking with his. Threx doesn't fear me. He doesn't fear his mercenaries. He fears you, because you are everything he can't control. The words clawed at something Elias had buried deep, the part of him that remembered fire and comrades and a cause worth bleeding for. He clenched the edge of the console, jaw tight. Don't put me on a pedestal, Lyra. Men who get called unbreakable usually end up broken. Her gaze softened, and for the first time, he saw vulnerability in her steel. Maybe, but I'd rather stand with someone who fights broken than kneel beside those who never fight at all. The cockpit dimmed as the ship shifted into deeper drift. The hum of the engines filled the air, steady, alive. Elias leaned back, exhaling slowly. He hadn't realized how much weight pressed on him until this moment, speaking aloud what he'd carried in silence for so long. And though he didn't say it, he knew the truth. The ghost of frontier hadn't left him. But with Lyra sitting across from him, they no longer seemed so heavy. Chapter 6, Betrayal at the Edge of Space. The Wayfarer's Rest coasted on silent engines, drifting along the starless rim where the void stretched unbroken for light years. The freighter's hull creaked under the strain of old metal, each groan reminding Elias Ward of how long he'd lived on borrowed time. Inside the cockpit, the only light came from the consoles, a pale blue glow painting both his and Lyra's faces in shifting shadows. She sat in the co-pilot's chair, her eyes fixed on the vast darkness outside, as though searching for something only she could see. Elias adjusted the throttle, absently, gaze flicking to her. He'd spent hours replaying their escape. The way her voice had cut through the chaos, the strange pull he couldn't quite shake. 20 years without a woman, and now one sat close enough that he could see the faint scar on her jaw, the curve of her lips when she thought no one was watching. But something gnawed at him. The silence between them wasn't ease. It was tension coiled tight, like a wire ready to snap. You've been quiet, he said finally, his voice rough. Lyra didn't turn. Because I'm deciding whether to tell you the truth. The muscles in his shoulders stiffened. That doesn't sound like the start of a good conversation. She inhaled slowly, hands tightening on her robes. I didn't find you by chance, Elias. Every instinct screamed at him. He shifted in his seat, eyes narrowing. What do you mean? Her gaze finally met his, and for the first time he saw not just steel in her eyes, but guilt. You were part of my contract. Your name, your DNA. Threx made me swear. If I ever saw you, I was to bring you to him. Elias's jaw locked, the cockpit suddenly colder. His hands curled into fists on the console. So this was a setup? No. Her voice was sharp, urgent. Not anymore. At first, yes. He marked you as a human who could not yield. He feared you, Elias. He wanted you captured, broken, paraded as proof that even humanity could bend. His chest tightened, an old fire roaring to life beneath his ribs. The frontier wars had left scars, but they had also left a reputation. Humans fought like demons, reckless, unrelenting, and it seemed even decades later, the galaxy hadn't forgotten. So what? His voice was low, dangerous. You plan to walk me back in chains? Let him finish what the wars didn't. Lyra leaned forward, her hands clutching the armrests as if reaching for him but stopping short. I planned to survive. But the moment I saw you, I knew I couldn't do it. Not to you. Elias barked a laugh, bitter and raw. Forgive me if I don't feel flattered. You think I wanted this? Her voice cracked, something breaking through her carefully built mask. You think I chose to carry a tracker under my skin? That I chose to be Threx's bargaining piece. She pulled at her robe, revealing a faint shimmer beneath the skin of her collarbone, alien circuitry, glowing faintly. He can find me anywhere, Elias, which means now he can find you. The console beeped as if on cue, proximity sensors flaring red. Elias slammed a fist against the dashboard, eyes narrowing as 3 crimson signals blinked into existence on the radar. Ships. Heavy. Closing fast. His heart pounded, but his mind steady with the old clarity he hadn't felt in years. You brought them here. Lyra's face twisted with anguish. I didn't want to, but they'll never stop until I'm back, or until you're dead. Elias rose from his chair, the ship's hum vibrating beneath his boots. He stared down at her, every line of his face carved from years of hard survival. You should have told me sooner. I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid you'd walk away. He shook his head, turning back to controls. The freighter's engines roared to life, the hull shuddering as he pushed them harder than they were meant to go. Outside, the signals grew larger, hunting them like wolves. Well, Lyra, he muttered, his hands flying across the console. You were right about one thing. She swallowed. What's that? Elias's eyes burned with fire, the reflection of incoming warships gleaming in them. Humans don't yield. Not to warlords. Not to fleets. Not to anyone. The Wayfarer's Rest plunged into the darkness, 3 predators at its back, and for the first time in 20 years, Elias Ward wasn't just surviving. He was preparing to fight. Chapter 7, The Human Gambit. The void flared alive with hunters. 3 warships broke from the dark, their hulls black as obsidian, bristling with weapons that glowed like molten eyes. Alien glyphs crawled across their armor, pulsing in rhythm with their engines. They fanned out in a predatory arc, boxing in Elias's freighter like wolves, circling a crippled beast. The Wayfarer's Rest shuddered as its worn engine strained, alarms shrieking across the cockpit. Elias Ward's hands flew across the controls, coaxing every ounce of speed from metal long past its prime. Lyra clutched the co-pilot's chair, her knuckles white, eyes locked on the growing storm. They'll tear us apart, she whispered. Elias's jaw tightened. Not if I tear us apart first. Lyra turned toward him, confusion flashing across her face. What are you talking about? The sensors pinged again, this time not with enemy signatures, but with the massive gravity well looming ahead. A star colossal, unstable, its surface boiling with storms of plasma. It filled the viewport in a flood of red and gold, its light bleeding across Elias's scarred face. No! Lyra shook her head, realization dawning. You can't be serious. Elias's lips curved into the faintest, grim smile. They say humans are reckless. Time to prove them right. The freighter groaned as he angled it toward the inferno. The glow intensified, heat searing through the ship's shields until Console screamed warnings. The star's corona reached for them like grasping fingers of fire. Behind them, the alien fleet hesitated. For all their size and weaponry, they did not follow. Their captains knew better. No one flew into the arms of a dying sun. No one except Elias Ward. The ship rattled violently, the hum of the engines rising into a desperate roar. Loose tools rattled in their lockers, and the air itself grew hotter, tinged with the acrid bite of overworked circuits. Lyra gripped the edge of her seat, sweat beading along her brow. You'll kill us both. Elias's eyes never left the viewport. Better us than chained in Threx's hall. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who had danced with death too many times to fear its hand. But if you've got faith, hold on, because humans don't do suicide runs. What do you do then? She shouted over the wailing alarms. We gamble. The freighter plunged into the corona. Light consumed the cockpit, blinding, searing. Plasma storms lashed against the shields, shaking the ship until it felt like it would shatter apart. Elias's knuckles whitened as he gripped the throttle, every muscle straining against the fury of the star. Warning lights strobed crimson. The shields buckled, flickering, sparks cascading from overloaded panels. Lyra gasped as a conduit blew, filling the cockpit with the acrid sting of smoke. Still Elias pressed forward. Come on, old girl, he muttered to the ship, voice rough but steady. One more fight. The alien warship circled at the edge of the star's reach, unwilling to risk the chaos within. But one captain, too proud to let prey slip away, dared to advance. The sleek hunter ship crossed into the corona's storms, only to be swallowed whole, its shields disintegrating in a flare of white-hot plasma. It vanished in an instant, a scream cut short by the fury of the sun. Lyra flinched, eyes wide. You planned this. Elias's gaze hardened. I trusted the odds. The freighter skimmed along the storm's edge, dancing between death and survival. Elias wove through solar flares with instinct no alien computer could match, reacting not with calculation, but with gut-born defiance. Sweat ran down his temple, the heat pressing against his lungs, but his hands never wavered. At last, the sensors beeped, an opening, a flare of magnetic turbulence, invisible to alien scanners, but predictable to a human who knew how to gamble with physics. Elias yanked the freighter through it, engines screaming as the ship was slingshot clear of the star's gravity well. They burst free into the void, battered but alive. Behind them, the alien fleet shrank, unwilling to follow where a human had just dared. The cockpit fell into a stunned silence, save for the hiss of cooling systems and Elias's ragged breath. He slumped back, eyes closing for a beat, then glanced sideways at Lyra. She stared at him, all cutting through her fear. In the fiery reflection of the dying star, she saw not just a reckless man, but something else. Something no alien could predict or control. Faith flickered in her eyes, fragile but real. Elias leaned forward, adjusting controls as the ship coasted into safer space. His voice was quiet but firm. That's what it means to be human. Chapter 8. You know what to do? The Wayfarer's rest drifted in silence, beyond the viewport. The dying star shrank into distance, its storms now a faint glow swallowed by the void. The ship's engines idled low, their hum soft and steady, like a heartbeat slowly finding its rhythm again. Elias Ward sat in the pilot's chair, shoulders heavy but hands steady. His knuckles were raw, a smear of blood across the throttle, where he'd clung through the storm. Sweat had dried into salt on his brow, and his body ached from the strain of holding the ship together. But his eyes were alive. They hadn't been, not for 20 years. Lyra sat across from him, her robes torn and smudged with soot, a lock of dark hair stuck to her damp cheek. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling as if she'd only just escaped drowning. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't the emptiness Elias had known for 2 decades. It was a silence charged with something new, fragile, unspoken. Finally, Lyra broke it. "You should be dead." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with wonder. No one flies into a star and comes back out. No one. Elias gave a small, weary smirk. That's the problem with no one. Humans never got the memo. Lyra stared at him, her eyes wide, reflecting the faint glow of starlight. She looked as though she was seeing him for the first time, not as a relic, not as a weapon, but as something else, something impossible. She leaned forward, her hand trembling as it hovered above his scarred one on the console. When her fingers finally touched, it was tentative, as if the act itself might break her. "Do you understand now why Threx feared you?" she whispered. "It's not just that you fight. It's that you gamble with death and you win." Elias didn't pull away. For 20 years, he recoiled from touch, from connection. But now he found himself closing the distance, his hand turning beneath hers, callous palm pressing into her delicate fingers. "I don't win," he said quietly. "I just refuse to lose." Lyra's lips curved, a faint smile breaking through the cracks in her composure. She exhaled slowly, as though releasing a weight she had carried for too long. Then she spoke the words that had first pulled him from the silence, words that now carried an entirely different meaning. "You know what to do, human." The cockpit seemed to still, the hum of the engines fading to a distant thrum. Elias's chest tightened, his throat working around the ache of 2 lost decades. He didn't need to ask what she meant. For once, there was no battlefield, no mercenaries, no warlord between them. Just 2 broken souls orbiting each other, closer than they had ever dared. He leaned forward, his forehead brushing against hers, the faint scent of smoke and alien spice clinging to her hair. "Yeah," he whispered. "I do." Their lips met, not in the desperate fire of escape, but in something deeper, something Elias had thought forever lost. The kiss was steady, grounding, pulling him back from the edge of the void he'd walked for 20 years. Lyra's hand cupped his jaw, her touch trembling but sure, as if anchoring herself to him as much as he to her. When they finally pulled apart, the silence lingered, softer now. Elias let out a slow breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. "Guess I'm not as dead inside as I thought." Lyra's smile was faint but real. "No, Elias Ward, you're very much alive. And so am I." The stars stretched endless before them, constellations foreign yet familiar in their promise of roads untraveled. Elias shifted the ship into drift, the engines humming stronger, steadier. For the first time in decades, he wasn't running from ghosts. He was chasing something new. Lyra leaned back, still watching him, her eyes no longer filled with fear or desperation, but with a quiet faith. "Where do we go now?" Elias's gaze lingered on the stars, then turned back to her, his hand still wrapped around hers. "Anywhere," he said, "as long as it's not alone." The Wayfarer's Rest glided into the void, its battered hull glowing faintly under the starlight. 2 fugitives, 2 survivors, no longer ghosts, but partners. And in the endless silence of the galaxy, Elias Ward finally heard something he thought he'd lost forever: purpose. The Wayfarer's Rest drifted in the velvet dark, its engines humming with a steady rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. Outside the viewport, alien constellations stretched infinite, their strange geometries glittering like secrets scattered across the void. Below, a neon-lit world spun slowly, its cities blazing like circuits against the night, voices of countless species carrying faintly through open comm channels, reminders of a galaxy still restless, still alive. Elias Ward stood at the console, scars softened by the glow of starlight. Lyra came to stand beside him, her reflection joining his in the glass. For the first time in 20 years, he wasn't alone in that reflection. "They'll come after us again," she said softly. "Let them," Elias murmured, sliding an arm around her shoulders. "We don't break. That's the one thing they'll never learn." She leaned into him, her hand resting over his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath. Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "Then where do we go now?" Elias smiled, eyes fixed on the endless horizon. "Anywhere the stars will have us." Together, the ship surged forward, slipping into the current of light, a battered freighter carrying two souls who had outlived their chains. And as the galaxy stretched open before them, the silence was no longer empty. It was full of promise. Lyra's final words lingered like a vow, etched into the hum of the engines. "You know what to do, human.